I never thought a dumb joke during a beach volleyball game would be the moment everything cracked. We were supposed to be reconnecting, escaping the routine, celebrating our 6-year anniversary with sun, sand, and bottomless mojitos. 2 kids safely with my mom back home. No school runs, no dishes, no work calls, just me and her, just us. Or at least that's what I believed. Her name's Chloe. 34, brown curls that catch the sun just right, this crooked little smile when she's being sarcastic, which is often, and a laugh that once made me fall in love with her in a bar bathroom line back in college. But something about her had shifted lately. I couldn't put my finger on it. She was more distant, distracted. Her phone was glued to her hand, even at the dinner table. She wasn't mean or cold, just elsewhere. Like I was watching her through glass. Like I wasn't with her, just next to her. Still, I chalked it up to stress. We both work a lot. Life had been a grind lately. This trip was supposed to fix that. It started off fine. Better than fine, honestly. The resort was ridiculous. Overwater bungalows, turquoise ocean, staff that smiled like they'd been paid extra just to radiate peace. We had our own plunge pool, a hammock, and an outdoor shower. Heaven. Or so I thought. The first night, we walked barefoot along the beach, drank coconut cocktails, and made dumb jokes like we were 20 again. "I bet you $20 you're the first to burn," she said, flicking my shoulder. "Please, I've trained for this vacation. SPF 100, baby." She laughed, but her eyes drifted over my shoulder, to the bonfire pit where a group of tourists were playing music and laughing. One of them, a tall guy in a tank top, caught her glance and nodded. I noticed. I always notice. Still, I let it go. The next morning, we signed up for beach volleyball. A casual game for guests. Nothing serious, just some sweaty fun in the sun. "Remember college intramurals?" I grinned as we grabbed the ball. She smirked. "You mean when you pulled your hamstring because you thought you were still 18? "Hey, I still got it." She raised an eyebrow. "We'll see." The teams formed fast. Chloe and I were together on one side. The other team was a duo, both tall, tanned, lean. One of them was the guy from the bonfire. I'd later learn his name was Mark. Mark was the kind of guy who probably kite-surfed at dawn and owned a leather bracelet that actually looked good on him. The kind of guy who called people bro unironically and somehow pulled it off. His partner was more quiet, but equally athletic. Meanwhile, I was the IT guy who brought his wife to the Maldives to reignite a spark. We were crushed. I mean, it wasn't even close. Chloe played well, better than I expected. She used to be on her high school team, apparently. That little competitive smirk came back, the one I hadn't seen in months. She was alive out there, laughing, diving for the ball, high-fiving Mark. I was the weak link. "Come on, babe, bend your knees," she shouted after I missed yet another serve. "Maybe you should have married Mark," I muttered, half laughing, brushing sand off my legs. She smiled. "Too late for that, right?" Everyone laughed. It was lighthearted. For now. By the 10th serve, I had 2 realizations. I was more out of shape than I liked to admit. My wife had just turned into a damn volleyball assassin. Chloe was everywhere, diving, spiking, calling shots like a team captain, hair pulled tight, tank top clinging in all the right ways, and that competitive fire in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Every time she landed a point, she'd shoot this triumphant smirk at me as if to say, "See? This is who I used to be." I was happy for her. Or at least, I told myself I was. Me? I was out here wheezing through my sunscreen, trying to keep up. Mark, on the other hand, looked like he lived for this. Shirtless, bronze like a goddamn protein ad, yelling, "Let's go," after every point. He played like the ball owed him money. Chloe matched him beat for beat. They were vibing. Too well. Halfway through the match, after yet another point lost to their team, I made the mistake. Mark tossed the ball to serve and shouted across the net, "Ready for another beating, my man?" I laughed and called back, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Tell you what, If you win this match, I'll even throw in dinner with my wife." Laughter exploded around the court. I grinned, wiped sweat from my brow, soaking in the attention. Classic husband humor. Light, fun, self-deprecating. Chloe froze for a second, then smiled. Slow, amused, dangerous. Mark tilted his head and gave me a grin that was just a little too real. "Careful, bro. I might just take you up on that." I raised both hands in mock surrender. Hey, don't blame me when she orders lobster and 3 bottles of wine." People chuckled again. A couple from the bar gave us a cheer. Chloe called out without even looking at me, "Oh, I don't know. Depends on who's pouring the wine." Oof. I laughed, tried to play it cool, but the back of my neck was already warm and not from the sun. We kept playing. Every serve felt heavier, every rally more personal. I fumbled a dig. Again. The ball rolled behind me into the sand. Chloe sighed and didn't even try to hide the eye roll this time. "Seriously? That was yours." I slipped. I muttered. "You watched it land." Mark jogged past me to grab the ball. He clapped me on the back. "Hey, don't worry, man," he said, not unkindly. "You've already given me the best prize." I stopped walking. He tossed the ball back into the air like nothing happened. Was he joking? Probably. Did it feel like a joke? Not exactly. Next serve came fast. Mark slammed the final serve past me before I could even react. Sand kicked up near my ankles as the ball landed square in our zone. Game over. I bent over, hands on my knees, chest heaving. Chloe didn't say anything right away. She just stood there, hands on her hips, looking down the court. Not at me, not even really at Mark, just away. Finally, she let out a breath and muttered, "Well, that was embarrassing." Mark strolled over from the other side of the net, twirling the ball on his finger like this was just another warm-up round. "You played like a beast out there," he said, looking at her. "Not me." She met his eyes and gave him a slow, deliberate high five. It wasn't celebratory, we'd just lost, but it lingered. Like they were sharing a joke I hadn't been invited to. I straightened up, trying to smile, to keep the vibe light. Mark grinned. "I suppose dinner is on you. That was the deal, wasn't it?" I blinked. "Wait, you're not actually serious, right?" He shrugged, easy and confident. "Hey, you made the offer. I'm just holding you to it." Chloe walked over and stood beside him, brushing a curl from her face. She looked at me and said, with that same damn smirk I used to love, "You did say it out loud, in front of everyone." The small group of onlookers chuckled. Someone even clapped. I let out a dry laugh. "Okay, come on, it was obviously a joke." Mark smiled wider. Sure, just saying, man gives his word, sometimes it sticks." Then he looked at Chloe. "And I know a great little seafood spot by the marina." She didn't say no. I blinked. "Wait, what?" He looked at me, wiping sweat off his brow. "You said if we win, I get dinner with your wife, remember?" Chloe stepped up beside him, tossing her hair back, and said sweetly, "Yeah, babe, you did say that." The onlookers, maybe a dozen now, started chuckling. Someone said, "Oh." I laughed nervously. "Guys, come on, I was joking." Mark shrugged. "Sure, but you said it in front of witnesses." I raised an eyebrow. "You're not seriously—" He cut me off, playful but firm. "Hey, man says something like that, he better stand by his word." Chloe tilted her head. "And I am hungry." They didn't even bother to change. Chloe still had sand on her legs and Mark was dripping sweat, but off they went, laughing, barefoot, heading toward the open-air bar like they'd won some kind of prize. I stood there, frozen for a beat, the sun already starting to dip behind the palms. A few people patted me on the back like I was a good sport. One older guy chuckled and said, "Man of your word, huh?" before heading back toward the pool. I laughed along. I had to. It was a joke. It was just a joke. It had to be. But the longer I stood there alone, holding a volleyball that didn't even belong to me, the less funny it got. I walked back to the bungalow slowly. My shirt was soaked, my mouth dry, my legs like rubber. I passed a few couples holding hands, some kids chasing crabs along the shoreline. The resort looked like a damn postcard. I felt like a background blur. Back in the room, I rinsed off the salt and sand, poured myself a double from the minibar, and sat on the little balcony that faced the ocean. Just me, the crashing waves, and the growing pit in my stomach. It was just dinner. She said it was just dinner. At some point, I checked my phone. No messages, no updates, no apology text, no, haha, can you believe that? Just nothing. At 7:48 p.m., I sent, "You good? Want me to meet you at the bar later?" Nothing. At 8:17, I tried again. "Still at dinner?" No response. By 9:10, I stopped checking the time. I sat there staring into the dark, replaying the game in my head. The way she smiled at him. The way he touched her elbow when she laughed. The way she didn't even look back at me when she left. She came back just after 10. I heard the key card before I saw her. The door clicked and she walked in like nothing happened, still barefoot. A margarita glass in her hand, hair a little messy. That post-beach, post-laughter glow on her skin. I stayed seated on the bed, arms crossed. "Hey," she said casually, kicking off her sandals. "You showered?" "Yeah," I said flatly. She sat down across from me, sipped what was left of her drink, and let out a sigh. That was fun. I stared at her. "Was it?" She raised an eyebrow. "Don't start. I'm just asking." "It was a joke," she said, tone sharpening. "You offered me up like a piece of meat in front of a crowd. I just played along." "You went with him?" "Yeah. To dinner. Like the joke said. You practically dared him to." I clenched my jaw. "For 2.5 hours?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. Are you jealous?" "I'm confused." She stood up and walked to the sink, setting down the empty glass. "Well, don't be. Nothing happened. He's just confident. Relax." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because deep down, I already knew. Something had changed. Not just tonight. Before that. Tonight was just when I finally saw it. The next morning, she was humming. Actually humming. I watched her from the bed as she stood near the little mirror, putting her hair up into a loose bun, one strap of her sundress falling off her shoulder like a movie cliché. She looked light, rested, like someone on vacation. Me? I'd barely slept. "Breakfast?" she said brightly, like we hadn't had a weird cold standoff the night before. "Sure," I muttered. She gave me a look. "Don't sulk, babe. It was just dinner." I didn't answer. At the buffet, we sat across from each other in near silence while she scrolled on her phone. Occasionally, she'd glance up and point something out. The parrots in the palm trees, a couple doing yoga by the pool, but her eyes kept drifting. She laughed at something on her screen. I asked what it was. "Oh, just a meme," she said, turning the phone face down. I stirred my coffee. "You texting Mark?" Her smile froze for half a second. Then she sipped her juice. "You seriously want to do this?" I looked at her. "I don't know what this is anymore." She leaned in, voice low. "Okay, then don't make it a thing. You joked. I played along. Stop acting like I cheated on you in the cabana." I opened my mouth, closed it again. This wasn't going anywhere. We went for a walk along the shoreline after breakfast. She walked ahead, not next to me. Her hand never reached for mine. She snapped pictures of the water, of her feet in the sand. None of us. When we circled back, he was there. Mark. Board shorts, sunglasses, lounging in a deck chair like he'd rented the sun. He looked up, gave Chloe a 2-finger wave. She waved back, way too casually, and I swear to God, I saw it. That little flicker in her expression. Recognition, excitement, like her day just got better. He stood up and stretched. "Hey, teammates," he grinned. "We're not teammates," I said before I could stop myself. He laughed. "Oh, right, I beat you," Chloe giggled. "And earned a dinner." Mark looked at me. "You guys hitting the water later?" "I think we'll chill today," I said quickly. "Oh," he said, and turned to Chloe. "If you get bored, I'm leading paddleboards at 3. Open invite." She smiled. Sounds fun. I stared at her. She didn't look at me. Back in the room, I finally asked, "You gonna go?" She looked at me like I was asking if the sky was blue. "I might." I crossed my arms. "Alone?" She raised a brow. "What does that mean?" "You're acting like he's not hitting on you." She snorted. "Maybe I like the attention." That hit harder than it should have. "Wow," I muttered. She shrugged. "You used to give me that look, back when we had fun." I felt something twist in my gut. "Then why are you even here with me?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. I sat there, staring at nothing, hearing the distant ocean, and wondering when exactly my wife had stopped being my wife. She left at 2:45, tight black swimsuit, loose linen shirt over it, hair up in a braid. No kiss, no hug. Just, "I'll see you later," tossed over her shoulder like I was a roommate she owed nothing to. I waited 10 minutes. Then I followed. I didn't plan to spy. I just needed to see, to know. The beach was busy, but I spotted them near the marina. Mark was already on a board, shirt off, paddling in circles like a show-off. Chloe stood on the dock, laughing as she tied her hair tighter. She looked happy, weightless. He offered her a hand. She took it. I stood half-hidden behind a cabana, heart pounding for no good reason. They paddled out together, not far, just enough to be alone. I watched them drift past the buoys, their silhouettes wobbling gently on the waves. She leaned toward him at one point, brushing hair from her face. He said something. She laughed. She didn't laugh like that with me anymore. I walked back slow. Sand felt heavier with each step. By the time she came back to the bungalow, the sun was down. Her cheeks were flushed, wet strands of hair sticking to her temples. She smelled like ocean and coconut. "Hey," she said lightly. I didn't answer, just stared at the muted TV screen. She dropped her towel, stretched her arms, and said, "That was fun. I forgot how much I love the water." I muted the TV. "You were gone 4 hours. She raised an eyebrow. "You keeping a clock on me now?" "You said see you later, not see you tonight." She sighed, peeled off the linen shirt, and stood there in her swimsuit, completely unbothered. "Okay," she said, arms crossed. "What's your problem?" I stood up. "You really don't see anything wrong with this?" "With what?" she snapped. "Doing something fun while my husband sits inside sulking all day? With going paddleboarding with a guy who clearly wants more than a tour of the bay? Oh, please. Chloe, he's not subtle, and you're not stupid." She narrowed her eyes. "You're acting like I slept with him or something. I don't know what you did. That's the point." She stared at me. And then, she said it. "Maybe if you made me feel wanted, I wouldn't care so much when someone else does." It landed like a slap. I said nothing. There it was. Not denial, not apology, just blame. She grabbed a fresh t-shirt and headed for the bathroom again. She said, "I came here to enjoy myself. You want to be a bitter little hall monitor? Go ahead." The door shut behind her, and I sat back down. Alone. More alone than I'd felt in years. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there in the dark, listening to the ceiling fan hum, like it was keeping time for a life I wasn't part of anymore. Chloe fell asleep almost instantly. Back to me. One leg kicked outside the blanket like she owned the bed, like nothing was broken between us. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about paddleboards and volleyball courts and high fives that lingered. I thought about how she used to sleep curled into me, and how now, the space between us felt like an ocean. The next morning was quiet. No humming. No small talk. She scrolled on her phone during breakfast. I stirred my coffee so long it went cold. She didn't notice. At one point I asked, "Plans today?" She shrugged. "Probably spa, or maybe the kayak thing. Not sure." "I'll come with." She paused, then said, "I kind of wanted a solo day." I nodded. I didn't push it. I couldn't afford to hear her say it twice. By noon, she was gone. I sat alone by the pool, drank a beer I didn't want, watched other couples laugh, flirt, splash each other. I must have checked my phone 20 times. No texts, no updates. By 5, I went back to the bungalow. Still empty. Sunset came. Still nothing. My stomach twisted every time I heard footsteps outside the door that weren't hers. She came in around 8:40 p.m. Hair damp, fresh lipstick, wearing a long black dress I didn't know she packed. I stood up as soon as the door shut. She froze. "Where were you?" She dropped her clutch on the table and said, too casually, "Out." "Out where?" She exhaled slowly. "Does it matter?" "Yes," I said. "It does, because I'm standing here wondering if my wife is still my wife." She stared at me. No emotion, just resignation. Then she said it. Quiet, flat. "You know already." I blinked. "What?" She looked away. "You're not stupid," she said. "You've seen it, felt it. So why are you making me say it?" I felt my breath catch. "So it's true." She didn't nod, didn't shake her head, just stood there, still, like something that used to be alive. I sat down on the edge of the bed. She walked into the bathroom, didn't even close the door all the way. Water ran from the tap. I looked at her dress tossed over the chair, lipstick smudged on a napkin beside her clutch. My heart didn't break like I thought it would. It just stopped trying. Morning came like it always does. The sound of a suitcase zipper, the soft click of the closet, the rustling of plastic travel bottles in her makeup bag. It was the day we left paradise. Checkout day. She moved through the bungalow like it was an Airbnb she'd barely stayed in. No hesitation, no pause. Just folded her dresses, slid on her sandals, and tied her braid like she couldn't wait to leave. I stood near the door, staring at our room one last time. The place looked untouched, like we'd never shared it. She didn't say much. Neither did I. There was nothing left to ask. Not that I had the strength to hear her answers anyway. We rode to the airport in silence. I could see her phone screen reflected in her sunglasses. She was scrolling something. Maybe her gallery. Maybe texts. She never turned it toward me. The flight boarded late. We stood in line side by side, shoulders almost touching. To the other passengers, we probably looked like a normal couple. But I could feel the gap between us like an electric fence. We took our seats. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes before we even took off. I stared straight ahead. I couldn't do this anymore. 30 minutes into the flight, turbulence started. Small bumps, just enough to wake her. She shifted in her seat, blinked at me and said, "You okay?" I looked at her, and it just came out. "No," I said. "I'm not." She blinked. "What now?" I kept my voice low. "Are you going to tell me anything? Or do I just keep pretending I didn't see what I saw?" She looked around us. 2 people in the row ahead turned slightly. "Keep your voice down." "Why?" I hissed. "Embarrassed someone might hear how you threw away 6 years for a guy who wears puka shells and says, 'bro,' unironically." She glared at me. "I didn't throw away anything. I just remembered what it felt like to feel something." That hit harder than any turbulence. "You mean not feel bored, or married, or like a mother? God forbid." She crossed her arms. "You never listened. You think a vacation fixes everything. You want me to be this grateful, smiling wife because you booked an oceanfront room?" I laughed, bitter and too loud. I wanted my wife to be here, not flirt her way through the resort. Someone across the aisle was definitely listening now. I didn't care. Chloe leaned in, voice sharp. "You handed me off like a joke in front of strangers. You made me a punchline. So yeah, I took the punch." My throat tightened. "I was trying to make you laugh." She looked at me, her voice quieter now. "Then maybe try something new, because I haven't laughed with you in a long time." She turned back toward the window. That was it. Conversation over. The rest of the flight was dead silent. She slept. I didn't. At baggage claim, we stood like co-workers waiting for separate rides. Outside, I said I'd grab a cab. She nodded. "Okay." a black SUV pulled up. She tossed in her suitcase. No hug, no goodbye, no thanks for the trip, just one last glance. Then the door shut, and she was gone. Not with a scream, not with betrayal, just a sigh, and the sound of rubber tires pulling away from what used to be our life. I didn't go home that day, didn't follow her cab, didn't text to check if she made it safe. I left the airport, sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, then drove straight to a law office I knew from a buddy's divorce last year. No dramatic speeches. Just walked in, filled out the intake form, and told the receptionist, I want out. She already left, just didn't take her things yet. 10 minutes later, I was signing my name at the bottom of a form that meant, this is it. No fight, no drama, just ink, paper, and a cold sense of relief. That night, after I got back from the law office, I parked outside a 24-hour diner and sat there in the dark, engine off, watching my own reflection in the windshield. It was almost midnight when I finally checked my phone. No missed calls, just one message. From her. It came in over 2 hours ago. I figured that's what you'd do. I won't fight it. We both knew it was coming. I just didn't expect it to come from you first. I stared at the screen for a long time. No apology, no denial, just quiet resignation, like the kind that settles over an empty hotel room after the guests have left. I didn't reply. What was there to say? The damage had been done days ago, maybe months, maybe years. All the words that might have saved us had either been buried or turned into jokes we couldn't take back. They say some endings are explosive. Ours was more like the tide, slow, inevitable, pulling everything away without a sound. We just stood there on the shoreline too long, pretending we weren't already drowning. The moment I said, if you win, you can take my wife to dinner. He won. She went. And I learned that sometimes a joke isn't funny. Sometimes it's just a truth dressed up to be ignored. People laugh when you say love dies quietly. But now I know better. It dies in the space between one laugh and the next. And when you finally stop pretending it's fine, you're already alone.